Well, hello there, YouTube, and welcome to another edition of The Breakfast Club with Got That Funk. Thank you for joining me. I'm sorry I missed my day yesterday. It was a World Cup game where England was playing Belgium. And of course, as I live in England, a foreigner needs to assimilate to the local culture. So obviously I had to go to a pub and drink and watch the game and, shout and get all merry and frustrated at the same time. Anyway, so that's enough about the World Cup for the moment. I wanted to talk in this video about the recent calls for people to be civil as a response to the heinous things that have been happening as regards children being taken away from their parents at the borders and conditions in which those children are kept. The fact that those children are having to go to court without any representation, even toddlers are expected to, how do you plead? What the fuck? What are you supposed to do when things are this fucked up, right? I'm not an advocate of Second Amendment solutions when it comes to stuff like this, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that phrase probably a bit later on. But what I find most ironic, all this kicked off because I suppose to get people who are watching this video non-contemporaneously later on, recently, press secretary for Donald Trump, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, tried to get a dinner at a Red Hen restaurant, and after she and a few guests sat down and were served briefly, my understanding is that some of the staff members approached the manager and said, look, we don't really want to serve them because of all this stuff that's going on with, kids being separated from their parents at the border, and, I don't really want to me it's fascist and I don't want to deal with it. And so they had a vote. The whole staff had a vote, and in the end, they voted to ask Sarah Sanders and her companions to leave, which she did. And then she went straight on Twitter on her government account and decided to complain about it. Now, it's totally her right to complain about it. Whether it was appropriate to do it on the government account, I think, is a different question, and I think it's pretty obvious that it's not appropriate for the exact reason that, the restaurant in question was bombarded by a lot of people who, To me, the whole thing blew completely out of proportion. Now, there was a lot of debate because people have been comparing, the idea that, the bakery or whatever that got sued for not making a wedding cake for a gay couple, and they want to compare that to this and say, why should they be forced to serve if these people won't be forced to serve? And it's entirely possible that if Sarah Huckabee Sanders wanted to take it that way, that she could, go to court and try to seek some compensation or whatever for what happened to her. Because I think you have to judge every kind of instance on its own merits, because every business has the right to refuse service, but it depends on what the reason is as to whether or not it's legal. There's such a thing as protected classes of people, for example. But it's not just that. To me, it's an issue of right or wrong. I mean, if someone, for example, is in your business and their presence in your business might bring your business into disrepute or cause you to lose other customers who are of equal or greater value to that customer, then I think it's well within your rights to ask that person to leave or those people to leave. So like I said, you have to judge each case on its own merits. I don't think you can really have a blanket statement for anything about when it comes to sort of personality disagreements, or in this case, strong political disagreements. And it's not a matter of political party in this case. Whether or not you think it's okay to separate children from their parents and possibly never allow them to see each other again when that's not what they knew was going to happen when they set off on their journey. I think that's not a partisan issue as far as I'm concerned. All you need is a conscience, and you just know that there's something seriously not right with that. And there's all sorts of other issues that go into that, which I won't discuss in this video. But it's so wrong what's going on right now. And, Trump signing his executive order hasn't really changed very much on the ground so far. And people are right to be pissed off and are right to respond to it. But there's appropriate ways and inappropriate ways. And I'm by no means calling for people to be more civil, quite the opposite. Because this whole fucking farce that people say, oh, whatever happened to civility? What do you mean, whatever happened to it? At what point in the past 15 years has discourse been civil? Have any of you people ever heard of Ann Coulter, for fuck's sake? Or Bill O'Reilly or fucking Sean Hannity? Those people trade on being uncivil. they've made millions of dollars by being uncivil, right? So this whole argument that civility is somehow a fucking just like a foregone conclusion that that's how people ought to be, I agree. Civility is something to strive for. Civilization is important to me, and that has an awful lot of facets. But I also believe that, free speech in the face of what is amounting to fascism very quickly, in my opinion, is extraordinarily important, and also one of the first things that they try to take away from you. Now, getting back to the specific case of Sarah Huckabee Sanders and the Red Hen restaurant where she was kicked out, I don't think it's necessarily inappropriate that, because actually Sarah Huckabee Sanders, they actually voted on it. It wasn't just like they said, I'm not going to serve you, get out or anything like that. And I think the manager probably did do a calculation of how it was going to affect the business to do this. So I think, like I said, if it went to court, I can't necessarily predict which way it would go, and I don't think any of us really can. And I think each case, as long as it's not like racist or, homophobic or anything like that, where you discriminate against someone for who they are rather than, how they are. If someone's misbehaving, for example, in your business, causing a fuss and making a scene, you might want to ask that person to leave, and you'd be well within your rights to do so. So like I say, case-by-case basis, in some cases may or may not be more actionable in court. Now, I want to bring up a few things, though, about the discussion that I've seen on the internet, which kind of seems missing. Like, for example, maybe not missing, but it doesn't seem to get the emphasis it should. Because I recall a few years ago, Joe Biden didn't get served at some bakery. And they were sort of, like people were hailing that at the time as, this guy's exercising his free speech and, blah, blah, blah. And he got a lot of media attention at the time. And that was all, the people hailing that were all on the sort of right-hand side of the political spectrum. And now that this has happened to someone on the right, they're going, oh, poo-poo, why aren't you guys being more civil, civility in the face of aggression can be seen as a weakness, and it gives the aggressor an advantage. Civility doesn't equal peace. It doesn't equal justice. It just doesn't. Yeah, and there are definitely appropriate times to be uncivil. Whether or not in a business setting that's appropriate, I think, again, would have to depend on a case-by-case basis. For example, if it was my business, I would say, look, if you don't want to serve them, we'll find someone who does. Or, personally, I think an employer would be within their rights to sack someone if they decided not to serve them. And when the employer said, no, I want you to serve them anyway, all customers are equal here, that kind of thing, because really what you're in business for is to earn money. And money itself, currency, the dollar, yeah? That should be the equalizing factor in every business transaction as far as I'm concerned. If you've got the money to pay for the product or service, you should get that product or service. That's what money is. If you've got the money, then you should be able to get the product or service. It shouldn't matter who you are, what you believe, and so forth. In theory, ideally, in peaceful, less chaotic times. But the fact is, people rightly, in my opinion, think, we can't keep sitting down and watching what's happen and be passive about it. And I absolutely agree with that, No one ever yielded anything to people because they weren't getting involved. You know what I mean? I just find it really ironic that so much of this conversation, that when it comes from the right to the left, and there's a different conversation going from the left to the right about this, and they're like, hey, I'll go a different way with that. But what's coming from the right, like the thumbnail in this video is that couple. It was a famous picture back in the Trump campaign. This couple at a rally with two T-shirts on that said, Trump 2016, fuck your feelings. And it's just like the irony of these people thinking that other people should be more civil is hilarious to me. I mean, Trump rode into power on this apparent appeal that he was being, not politically correct. And political correctness is just another term for civility. So the hypocrisy of the whole thing is outrageous to me. You know, people like Bill O'Reilly make extraordinarily inflammatory and derogatory comments about that abortion doctor, George Tiller, and later George Tiller was fucking shot in a church. And, you know, back in the day, Sarah Palin was putting like pictures of Congress people who voted the wrong way in her opinion. She put pictures with crosshairs on them, and one of those people was Gabby Giffords, who was later shot. You know what I mean? So fuck off with your calls for civility. You know, you first. How about that? How about that? You first. You know, when Justice Scalia died in the last year of Obama's presidency, Obama was still president for like almost 300 days, I think, before he had to go. And, you know, constitutionally, he was well within his rights to expect Congress to have a hearing on his nominee. And the fucking GOP wouldn't even give... what was his name? What was it? Merrick Garland. Wouldn't even give Merrick Garland a hearing, much less a vote, as to whether or not he would be accepted into the Supreme Court. That's not only uncivil, it's unfucking constitutional. I can't even believe, to this day, I can't believe they got away with it. And then Trump got to make the Supreme Court pick as soon as he got in. You know, Neil Gorsuch wouldn't fucking be there right now if these people were playing by the fucking rules and being civil. So fuck off with your calls for civility. You know, free speech rules as far as I'm fucking concerned. And in a case of, you know, if you don't want to serve someone, I think if they've got the money, you really ought to serve them unless you have strong reason to believe that that person, doing business with that person is going to harm your business in another way. And you'd have to make that case if they decided to action it. But I think you, within your rights to kick them off on the spot, and then later on, you know, if they want to come back at you, that might be your problem. So you have to weigh carefully whether or not it's worth, you know, in your interest to kick someone off, you know. This is how I feel. I feel you should have the freedom to be able to, as a business owner, to say, no, your business, doing business with you will harm my business. But I don't think you can do that on bases like racism or homophobia or anything like that. Because like I say, it shouldn't be about who you are. It should be about what you do. What you do in that business, in that establishment, you know. That to me is the main thing. I don't know what else to say. You know, I think I could make the point over and over again. You know, Trump calling NFL players sons of bitches, or fucking getting his rallies to say lock her up, lock her up. He's, you know, chanting about trying to put in jail your political opponents is as dictator as it gets. You know what I mean? And it's very clear to me that the majority of people who go to these rallies are, you know, Trump's hardcore fans, and it really has, as far as I can observe from this side of the pond anyway, it has all the hallmarks to me of a cult of personality. These people don't support Trump because of his policies. They support Trump because of what he represents to them, how he makes them feel. This is why it's really hilarious to me that they're like, you know, they say, oh, fuck your feelings, when it's their feelings are the ones that are being assuaged by Trump in the first place. He makes them feel good because he owns the libs as far as they're concerned. And it's, you know, pissing the libs off, I'll grant you that. Owning the libs, please. It's not even close. That's my opinion, but obviously I'm biased. Anyway, I think I've made all the points I wanted to make for this video. I look forward to a lively discussion in the comments section down below. Hopefully we'll have JJ Talks back tomorrow on The Breakfast Club, and I'll see you again next week. Let's get to chatting down there. In the meantime, may all your ups and downs be ups.